Conor O'Shea is the Policy and Public Affairs Manager at Generation Rent, who campaign to make homes safe, secure and affordable. Hi, Conor.
Hi, Tony. Hi, good afternoon, listeners.
Do you agree with these MPs? Do more protections need to be extended to the private rented sector?
Most certainly, we really do agree with it. And listening to Keon's story there, the real true impact that mould has on families across the country is really profound. It's a health issue. It's something that really does damage and ultimately does kill people in homes across the country. And the government was entirely correct to step in with Awaab's law after the death of Awaab, tragic death in Rochdale a couple of years ago. And what this piece of legislation does for social homes is it means that when reports of damp and mould are made, action must be taken within a certain amount of time, which will mean that people aren't living for so long in these horrible mouldy homes.
Yeah, why has it taken so long, though? Why has it taken so long to start to improve things? Can't have people living like this.
No, we can't have people living like this. And like you said, Keon is a perfect example, a terrible example, if you will, of just what the reality of living in a mouldy home does. So having this legislation in the social sector, which is where Keon was, would have meant that it takes just 2 weeks, or within 2 weeks, the landlord has to act. There has to be something done. And it's that thing of taking people out of dangerous scenarios. And unfortunately, the government haven't seen fit to implement this in private homes. So if you rent your home off of a landlord, for example, you're not covered by this legislation. And that means if you find damp and mold in your home, which might be next door to a social home, which is covered by this legislation, there's no imperative for them to act in a certain amount of time. And that's going to keep people in dangerous homes, and it's going to make sure that it's going to basically lead to severe health issues, continue to lead to severe health issues. And something does have to be done by bringing it across and making it the same for both tenure types.
Yeah, because sometimes they might put it back on the tenant saying, well, you need to ventilate the room, you need to do this and that, before actually coming around and taking a look at what the situation really is.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we hear quite often. But ultimately, it is the responsibility of the landlord to ensure that the property is ventilated properly. And once damp and mold appears, action has to be taken, because the bottom line is people's health. You heard from Keon how her kids were reacting to living in that conditions, all the coughing and the vomiting and the illness. And look, our Bishak's case is tragically one where somebody died as a result of living in a mouldy home. So taking it seriously and acting fast is a really important step. And we do need to see this brought across to the 12 million people who live in privately rented homes, as well as those who live in social housing.
Do you hold out hope that this will be the change that makes things better?
Well, it comes as part of an interesting time in renting, because we have the Renters Reform Bill going through Parliament at the moment, which is going to make a number of changes to renting. And one of the really important things that the government is doing is abolishing Section 21 no-fault evictions, which is the piece of legislation that means people can be evicted from their home in just 8 weeks through no fault of their own. And while that exists, people will always be scared to make complaints to their landlord about things like this, because they know that ultimately the landlord can turf them out and replace them with someone who's not going to complain. So addressing this power imbalance between the tenants and the landlords is also going to help. But we need to make sure that does go through, and that tenants are more empowered to make these complaints. And that would be a really positive step in the right direction as well.
Conor, appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on. That was Conor O'Shea, Policy and Public Affairs Manager at Generation Rent.